Okay. Hi. Well, it's so nice to be here with you ladies today. My name's Summer. For those of you who don't know me, that was my very intense husband in the first hour. And I just gotta say, I don't know what y'all's experience is going to conferences and things like that. I don't know if you're a regular, if this is new and weird, but my favorite thing about stuff like this is that you find out that wherever you go, you have friends. Like, when you meet like-minded believers, it's not like you're starting at square one, right? Like, you already have the most in common. I have more in common with you ladies in this room than I do my next door neighbor, my unbelieving family members, and that's my favorite thing. And I know, hopefully, y'all are experiencing that every Sunday, right? When you go to corporate worship, you experience that very, very real fellowship with people that you share an inheritance with. And I'm not saying this is like church, but just the gathering of like-minded saints is such a comfort. And so everybody I've met here, I feel like I know you. I don't know you. I know I don't know you, but I feel like I know you. And the hospitality has just been incredible so far. So thank you guys so much for that. And cool story, if I don't get to know you before I croak, I'll see you in eternity. So we got plenty of time, you guys. We got all the time in the world, actually. I'm not stressed about it at all. So I've been asked, guess what I've been asked to talk about? I don't know if you know, but I've been asked to talk about feminism in the household. Probably because I talk about feminism a lot. And as I was thinking about what do I want to say to a bunch of women who are probably not feminists, probably not. I'm willing to bet that no one in this room is like going to the Women's March unless it's to pass out tracts, right? Like, if you guys are going, you're going to evangelize, and that's what you should do there. But the older I get, the less I believe that feminism is actually low-hanging fruit. Because ultimately, I do believe that feminism is so pervasive that it is worth talking about. It is worth thinking about. I will say, too, that I hope you guys have questions for the Q&A because I'd rather talk to you than at you. You can ask me anything you want. We can talk about bread. We can talk about whatever you want. So just so you know, I'm wide open. You do not have to have some clever question about a suffragette. Let's chat because that's what is fun here as far as I'm concerned. But why is it worth it to talk about feminism? Why do I spend so much time talking about feminism? It is because I grew up in I have nothing bad to say about the household I grew up in. We never missed a church service. We went to that old school Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday prayer meeting. My friends were Christians. And I still, as an adult, in my household, have had to interrogate my own beliefs, my own foundational beliefs that I believed about myself as a woman, because if you are living and breathing right now, feminism is around you. And it's just something that you need to be able to see for yourself. So I truly believe that in order to recognize feminism in our households, we have to engage and be willing to interrogate any underlying worldview that we may not realize we have been operating by. Ultimately, feminism is not new. right? It's old. It's that old lie that came from the garden. But these worldviews, they don't come neatly labeled so that we can always easily recognize them. And they often mutate, right, into forms that we can hardly recognize. And the most powerful worldview is the one that you absorb without knowing it. It's the ideas that nobody really talks about, or the assumptions that we pick up almost by osmosis. So, again, I know I'm speaking to a room full of women who are going to be glad to interrogate their worldview and not want to carry feminism into the household. And I want to encourage you to be willing to do that and to really be willing to interrogate your inner man, right? Your inner monologue, the things that you don't say out loud. And ultimately, the autonomy that is sold to us by our current culture, the one that says that you make yourself, you define yourself, you choose who you are, doesn't fit with reality. So when you were born, you didn't choose that. I mean, if you did, please let me know. That's crazy. Who among us was like, I want to be born now? You didn't choose your gender, you didn't choose your parents, you didn't choose your name, you didn't choose where you were going to live, but you were born with your marching orders by virtue of who God made you. He made you this person in this place, this gender, and that should give you a ton of information about what your duties are today. So I got an email recently from a very thoughtful listener who sent me a very long email letting me know just how poorly I biffed it recently. And I really appreciated what she had to say, because she did not feel that in my discussion about feminism that I really hit the issues. She really felt that I skipped a lot. And it was a really insightful email. And she pointed out that, she's in a solid church. Their pastor pastors them. He speaks from the pulpit well. These women would pretty much agree with everything that I would say, but she's concerned when she looks around in the pews because she sees a lot of women who would say that children are a blessing, but they're not willing to have any more kids because they might lose their figure. She says the women in her church, they have scripture memorized, but they don't view their job in the household as really that important if you start to really talk to them. And I think this is a little bit where we can get in the weeds, and I'm gonna take this somewhere that hopefully none of you saw coming. I'm gonna give you a really extreme example. I'm gonna give you a test you can't fail. Are you guys ready for a test you can't fail? Okay, that's the kind of test I like. All right, you have a 2-year-old son. You love him very much, so you make a batch of cookies. Obviously, you love him very much, so you let him have a cookie. And then, of course, he's adorable, and he's a boy, so he's like, I want another cookie. And you're like, yeah, absolutely, I'll give you another cookie. And then he asks for a third cookie, and this is when you say, no, I'm putting these away in the jar, right? Okay. Well, later you see that little boy, he indeed went into the cookie jar, and he stole the cookie. All right. Next day, you witness your neighbor murder his wife. Okay. Which time did you call the police? When the boy stole the cookie, or when you saw the murder? This is please come on. Which one? Which time? Was it the murder? Okay. All right. You guys scared me. It was like you were thinking about it. You're like, I didn't want him to eat the cookie. No, okay. All right. You and I both know intuitively with this extreme example that some issues ought to be dealt with on a civic level and some ought to be dealt with on a household level. Okay? You did not need the police for that cookie. And in fact, if you called about the cookie, that I hope it didn't go well. I hope that the police did absolutely nothing, because that's none of their business, right? Okay. The household is where so many decisions ought to be made that are not being made. And that's what I want to talk to you. That's really what I want to talk to you about, because I know all of you hate feminism. I know you do. I know you think it's a bad idea. I see that you love your children. I see that. I see that you want a productive household. It's evident in so many churches. And I think where a lot of us as women get lost and where we need to come back to our battle station is truly in understanding what the function of the household is. And where us women get lost, it's in principles versus methods. So, what's a general principle that I will absolutely be dogmatic about? I have no apologies for saying this. Love one another. There's a principle. You all should obey it. I'm not sorry. I have no nuance to give you. You should love one another. However, here is where we get to do the real work. What is the method by which each of us is going to love one another? Because not only is it not going to look the same, it shouldn't look the same. So loving one another can look like making a meal for another person in the church, right? There was a time in my life where if I signed up for a meal train, it would not have been a blessing to the person I was delivering it to. That's not true anymore. I had to grow. But the moral of the story is, how do you serve and love one another? What does that look like? What does that look like in your household? Is it evangelism? Is it phone calls? Are you good at managing things? Can you help coordinate things? How are you going to be busy about the business of loving one another? It does not have to look like what I do. And in fact, it shouldn't. Because when you were born, you were giving your marching orders, and when I was born, I was giving my marching orders, and they're not the same. And that's okay. Here's another one where we ladies can often get unfriendly. Here's a principle I have no apologies for. Every single person in this room, you should obey it. You should dress modestly. Period. I have no nuance to give to that. However, it's none of my business how you choose to fulfill that command. It is none of my business. And this is another one that can just so often trip Christian women up, and we get all tied up in these arguments that we ought not to get tied up in. It is none of my business. It is the household's business, right? All right. So part of reclaiming the household is understanding that principles, these are true, unchanging truths for all time. Methods, y'all get to have fun with. And you should have fun with it. And I just cannot tell you how much I truly believe that as Christian women, if we reclaim and truly begin to love the principle and enjoy the different methods that other Christian women obey that principle by, the church would look very different. It would be a culture-changing thing. Another principle, right? Wives, mothers, our first duty is to the home. It's none of my business how you and your husband choose to run your household. And that's not going to look the same for everybody, and it's going to depend on what God decides your household is going to look like. So, Christ is king. He's king over our households. He's king over the principles, and we should crown him king over our methods as well, the way that we choose to serve and love one another and function in our households. Now, I have 5 kids. They're lovely, they're wonderful. I have a wonderful husband. But man, it's hard sometimes, and that's okay. Life is hard, life is work, that's okay. What I want to encourage each and every one of you to chase after today is a deep-seated trust for where God has placed you. The prayer of every heart, wherever we've been placed, however many kids we have or we don't have, needs to be, Lord, I need what you've given me. And sometimes that's a harder prayer to pray than others. The health issue you have was not a mistake. The miscarriage you had was not a mistake. It did not surprise God. He wasn't looking the other way when he placed you where he placed you, when you experienced whatever you experienced under his hand. It's not that all of it is pleasant, but none of it is given by mistake. And I truly believe as we seek to serve the Lord, if the thing at the forefront of our mind is true trust that I need what I have been given. This difficult day, this fussy toddler, insert whatever you want here. This is what I need. It will change how you view difficult moments and wonderful moments. The other thing that I think Christian women, well, at least for me, maybe you can tell me in the Q&A that doesn't work for you, that's fine. The other thing that we need to keep at the forefront of our minds is that sometimes it's not your turn. I think it's very, very easy for us to be impatient. I think it's very, very easy for us to wish away circumstances, right? How many times have you thought, man, I'd be so much more sanctified if I had her life? You know, I'd be so patient if there was absolutely nothing I needed to be patient about. I mean, we've all done it. We laugh because we believe that. But there is no secret. There is no secret to sanctification. There's no secret to building a Christian household. If you're sitting here today and you're like, what is it? What's the secret sauce? How do I make it? No, you already have it. Hello. You have been given all that you need for life and godliness. All of it. You're sitting there with it. You're like the toddler that has a bag full of cookies and is like, more cookies? No, you have all the cookies. You already have all of them. And we've been promised that. I think oftentimes we believe, tomorrow I'll figure it out. Tomorrow, I'm going to wake up tomorrow and I'm going to be the Christian I've always wanted to be. I don't know, you're not getting anything new tomorrow. And that should be so encouraging. Because ultimately, the person that transforms the household is Christ. It's all of Christ. If you have Christ, he is the household transformer. He is the new creation maker. And yes, I know we're living in the already not yet. Trust me, very aware. But he is the one who's going to bring us to completion. So I want you to remember that as you go about your work, that nothing done in service to him is ever lost. Not a thing. Even though you're definitely going to have to discipline that toddler that stole the cookie, it's not going to be lost. When you discipline the toddler that stole the cookie, You're building the 35-year-old man who's going to run his household one day. And it's not lost, and it's not wasted time. It's not empty. I'm a little scared for this next part. I want to take you back to my emailer that I told you about. I liked her email. It was insightful. It was thoughtful. She definitely hit on things that she was right. I didn't talk about those things. And there were sins that she listed in her email that are very real and that are problematic and that are worth addressing. But I do not believe we can win our cultural moment if we are the kind of women who can write a long email about each other's sins. We cannot be the kind of women who are very quick to see the faults of others. I really believe, I truly believe that being fussy about each other's sins, and yes, we ought to hate sin, and we ought to be willing to confront sin in our friends because we love them. We ought not be able to write long emails about how much they frustrate us. That love one another thing, that is a principle, an unapologetic principle of the Christian life. And here's what I want you to really leave with, is that your sisters in Christ are just that. They're in Christ. You can trust Christ to sanctify everyone who has heard his voice. You can rest in that. And, one of the frustrating things about sanctification is, I don't know about you, but it doesn't happen on my timeline. Like, it never goes as fast as I want it to go. Ever. If I was more sanctified, that wouldn't be true. So my encouragement to you is to come alongside each other, hold each other up, make it your business to take no mercy on your own sin, but to let love cover and truly love each other. A church full of women that love each other and serve each other is a powerful thing, is a very, very powerful thing. And you're like, Summer, I thought you were talking about feminism. Nope, I am talking about feminism. I am. Because interrogating your own sin and loving your neighbor, that's the secret sauce, guys. Like, we've been given our marching orders. It's not new. I have nothing new to give you. I have something hopefully ancient to give you, but I just want to remind you that it is Christ who is the transformer. It is faith in him that changes people. It is love for one another that's transformative. That's all we have. That's ultimately all that we have. So, trust in the Lord, I really believe. If you were to ask me, okay, but Summer, no, put the secret sauce in the line. How do you defeat feminism? Trust in the Lord and do good. Dwell in the land and cultivate faithfulness. Wherever you are, whoever you are, whatever you've got going on. And I know, I remember Paul Washer saying once that one of his least favorite things was when people are like, oh, trust in the Lord, but they don't tell you how to do that practically. And that really, sorry, hit my mic. That really, it's like, wow. That's a good point, Brother Paul. What does that mean for me practically? What does that mean for me today? And again, I have to tell you, there is no secret. It means joyful obedience where you are today. Are you being joyful? Are you being obedient? Are you loving one another? What does that look like? A great litmus test, by the way, this is my favorite litmus test for if I'm just being a grumpy Gus or not. Can I sing the doxology right now? Like right now. As I'm cleaning up the Kool-Aid off the floor again. Right now, can I sing the doxology? That's my question for myself. And I would encourage you, if you do need a heart change, if you are not having fun wiping that nose or insert whatever other uncomfortable, not fun thing here, sing the doxology. It's a heart check, and it's worth it, I promise. So that is my encouragement for you. I know if you were here to hear about suffragettes, I'll talk to you about them if you want. I really will. But what I want is really what I'm already experiencing here, which is when Christian women are in community, seeking to love and serve one another and their households, the community is transformed. And you do not have to do that how your friend does it. You might be single, you might not be given a husband. You might be married, you might not be given children. You are a woman. You have your marching orders by virtue of where you've been placed and who God says you are. So that's it, that's what I got. You guys got questions? Because they got a mic back there for you. I hope that you do, by the way, because I'd rather talk to you than at you. I don't know. Oh, look, there's my baby falling down the stairs. He's so cute. He's so cute. There you go. Oh, she's got the mic. All right, am I supposed to tell them? What do I tell them? Raise their hands? Okay, great. Take your time. We got started early, so we get to just do whatever we want now.
I have a question for you about, you know how there's like Christian lingo statements that like float around and it's sort of difficult to decipher whether they're true or not, or like they're just a funky feel-good statement. What would you do? I've seen this quote pop up on Instagram a lot, and some of my friends have said it to me. There's a hint of truth in it, which gets me confused. And they're like, there's no higher calling than being a mom and a wife. Which is true, sort of, like being a mom and a wife is great, but if I'm single and like trying to be faithful to my church community, it sort of feels like that statement would undermine that faithfulness.
Yes. Okay, no, that's a big one. That's a really great question. I believe that the kerfluffle over that statement is a misunderstanding between the practical application and the telos of the statement. So here's what I mean by that. Okay, a woman's highest calling is to be a wife and mother. Yes. What does that mean for women who are not married and do not have kids? So this is the practical application part of the question, right? Okay. I have many mothers that did not give birth to me. I do. I truly believe that so we don't want to go the way of the materialist where it's like, oh, well, nothing matters. I'm a spiritual mother. It doesn't matter. No, I'm not a materialist either. But what I am saying is that single women still have the call of functioning in the church with hospitality, with acts of service. I have learned a great many things about being a wife and mom from women who aren't married and don't have kids. So I do think that particular one, I think you were saying more in general, but you threw out that one in particular. I think that particular question is easy, but also difficult because it just depends on who your audience is and what they think you mean by that. Because I do believe that single women have a great opportunity to serve in the church that often wives and mothers don't. It's if you don't have 5 kids, it could be easier for you to accomplish certain things in the church that the moms with many kids can still do, but it's a little bit more difficult. So I do believe I have no problem with that statement. I would interrogate it a little bit, just to understand what the person is getting at. But one of my best mentors, greatest encouragers, she's not a married woman. And that's not her choice, not by choice, but that's where the Lord has placed her. And I have learned a lot. I have learned a lot from her wisdom, so I appreciate that. Does that answer your question? Yeah? All right, you have any other silly statements like we have questions about? Because that's fine. That was the main one, yeah. Yeah, I don't mind that one so much. What do you want them to, you want them to flag you down? Oh, you want them to raise their hands. Okay, cool. Nobody wants to talk.
I heard you say that we should be deaf on ourselves when it comes to sin. And we should be loving and not fussy with others. How do you balance that with the directive to be like iron sharpens iron?
Yeah.
Because iron sharpens iron because of friction.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So,
what does it look like?
What's it look like?
Yeah. Yeah, I think, well, I don't know about you guys, but if there's a sin that I'm sinning, I don't need a pep talk with myself. I don't need a hug myself. I need a stern talking to myself. And I do believe that based on your level of relationship, your relationship with said person should determine a lot. And I think that it's going to depend on the sin as well. Like, what is the sin? If your best friend is committing adultery, I'm not saying you should hug her and sympathize, because you shouldn't. But I do think that part of love and discipline, and especially like restorative, right? So if your friend is caught in a big one, your goal in mind should be restoration. Like, your goal in mind should be, like, we want the discipline to occur, we want forgiveness, we want repentance, we want all of those things for this person with the ultimate goal of restoration in mind. So how you approach this problem in the beginning should be with that goal at the end of restoration. And then, other sins are really going to be the lesser sins, right? Because not, again, the cookie in the cookie jar, the murder, we're running a big gamut here. It's going to depend on your relationship. But I do think that, and maybe this is not true for everybody, when I'm sinning and I need to deal with it, the answer is not, oh, I just need to be so sweet with myself right now. That's not what I need. But what I am saying is that the goal of your life ought to be the log versus the speck, right? It's the log versus the speck. And you can't ultimately deal with anybody else's sin. That's going to be up to them in Christ. And I just see I get a lot of emails. So it's so easy to see other people's problems. It's so easy to see everyone else's failures. It's always, the emails I get, it's like, listen to what everyone else is doing. I don't think that's going to get you where you want to go. I really don't. Does that answer your question? All right, good. All right, any other questions? Oh, this sweet girl has a mic. Oh, no, there's a switch. There you go.
Okay. I guess I just kind of have a comment on kind of that discussion to see maybe what do you think about it. But one thing that a thing that I know but don't practice well is that the Lord really deals with us kind of like one thing at a time. Like we don't even see. And I look back and I'm like, whew, how did I not see that? You know? And I think maybe that principle kind of applies. And I try to apply that with my children, and I don't do it very well. To try to think, I can't correct every single issue with them. I can't pick every battle at once. And that's with someone I am supposed to be correcting, what they're doing. So I don't know. That's just kind of a thought that I have. Yeah.
It's so gracious, right, that the Lord doesn't show us all of our sin all at once. I mean, who could stand? Like, if I woke up this morning just fully aware of every single one of my faults, and that was what was in the forefront of my mind, I wouldn't be standing. And that is gracious of the Lord. And it is, as you pointed out, something to remember in parenting. It's not that playing nice with sin is not the goal, is not the idea. But our loving Father is not opening our eyes to every single one of our sins and our failures at all times. And that is kind of the heart of what I was trying to say as well. And I do think that, I don't think it's a leap to say that inherent in feminism is this idea of everyone else's faults and the way that everyone else is sinning against me, and that's what I'm talking about. I think a soft heart is one that desires to have gracious assumptions, assume the best of others. That doesn't mean you have to give quarter to sin. That doesn't mean we look the other way. Again, you discipline the toddler for stealing the cookie. Yeah. Yes, you do. But you don't discipline the toddler for stealing the cookie and be like, and you were up all night. And your nose is runny. No, we don't need to pile on there. Not a good idea. All right, any other? Oh, there's one up front. Oh, look, we've got a sweet mic helper. She's coming. I think so. Talking to it?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is kind of something that's been very recent in my household. I'm very anti-feminism and always pointing out things in the culture. But recently God showed me how I had kind of allowed feminism into my heart. And that was by kind of being very controlling in my household. And it's just my husband and I. And so God showed me how for the past couple of years, I've been slowly taking control, and I've done that by maybe nagging my husband or maybe saying, let me do this and things. And I've done it because I wanted to help him, but God showed me, it was just very controlling. And so I talked to my husband about it and I said, I think I've taken some of your responsibilities. And he said, well, I've been telling you that for the past couple of years. You've not listened. And so I guess my question is how do you balance wanting to help your husband and be his helpmate, but not taking his responsibilities and submitting to him, if that makes sense?
Yeah. So my husband and I have this, he came up with this. I can't take credit for it. This is how his brain envisions it. So he has created what he calls a corral. And I know. Yes, I'm not a goat. Just, he has a corral. And pretty much what he says to me is he's like, anything inside of this corral, you take. I trust you. You're in charge of this. And if it pretty much, and the idea of the corral, again, I don't know, he's adorable and weird, and that's how his brain works. That's what he sees. But what he's saying is, this is the boundary he's putting around this thing. So I'll give you an example. We homeschool. He calls that my corral. So I spend the majority of the time teaching the children. He trusts me to say, hey, I made this decision last week. I said, this curriculum is too easy for her. I'm bumping it up. He does not want me to feel like I have to text him before I make this decision, because he's made it clear to me, this is your corral. This is inside of the corral. And I think this is, for him, a principle and method thing. So his principle is, my children will have a Christian education. My wife is going to be the one primarily at home with them, overseeing it. I trust her. So it's not like he knows what curriculum we're using, like he knows what's going on. But that's my purview. Another thing is food, groceries. He's like, hey, here's the budget. Have a great time. Enjoy. This is your purview. And so that works for us. That might not, you're gonna have that conversation of what is my latitude, longitude here? Another really great one is just decorating the house. He's like, don't make it too pink. Just kidding. He never had to say that to me. But the moral of the story is he doesn't, that's not his purview as far as he's concerned. So I think over time, you have these conversations, very open conversations, and it is very helpful to ask your husband, hey, how much of this do you want me to oversee? Because here's what I'm going to do. So how much of this, how do you feel about it? And having those conversations is just extremely, extremely helpful. And over time, I think that becomes easier as well. But a great question my pastor's wife gave me is, if you're you have a lot going on, asking your husband, hey, this is really a good brain break too. What do you want me to get done today? And the crazy thing about men is their list is, if your list was 12 things, theirs is going to be 4. So it's it's very helpful. But yeah, just having those conversations is helpful, and having that, I think also just having the trust of your husband is great. And having just that very open, honest conversation of I need you to tell me. Can you please tell me how you would like this to go? Because I would love to make that happen. I think is a thing a trustworthy wife will do. My problem is when my husband tells me I want these 4 things done, I'm well, I will do those first before I do the other 8 anyway. So does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a follow-up to that.
Okay. Where? Oh, hello. Hi. Okay.
I was wondering, obviously you seem very knowledgeable and constantly growing in maturity, and you have your own podcast, things like that. I was wondering, in marriage, how you submit to your husband while also having zeal to grow in knowledge and better your home. And then also, in singleness, how you think through, you want to grow in theology, you have this vision for your home, maybe of how family worship might look like,
best honor God. So how do you like continue to pursue God in that while also, you know, wanting to act in submission to a husband either now or maybe one day in the future?
Yeah, so my husband wouldn't let me not do these things. He is, he's probably the biggest, no one's listened to me more than my husband. And it's very important to him that I do these things. He takes on roles in our church, specifically that will include things like community and hospitality for me. And that's important. That's important to him. It's important to him that we are exercising those muscles. That hospitality is something that we're doing regularly. That being in the Word is something that we're doing regularly. And I really think in an efficient, productive Christian household, the husband and wife are working together on prioritizing these things. So when I was single, man, I just dug in. I like burrowed in like a tick to my church. If there was an opportunity, I took it. If there was a way to serve or to be in community, I was there. My pastors were, well, my dad's one of my pastors, so I'll just throw that in as, you know, my dad, my pastors were very much a part of decision making with me. I encourage women a lot to be, busy is not the right word, committed. Your pastor should know you, right? You can't be shepherded if they don't ever see you. You can't be shepherded if nobody really knows your name beyond, oh, that's the person that sits in the back. And so church is an amazing protection for single women. I often get emails from women who are in horrible situations and need help. And nearly every time they're reaching out to me, it's because, well, they never became a part of a church. They have no help. They have no protection. So I really think being a committed part of a local body is a amazing protection for women. And it's something that will grow you spiritually. So as far as learning and growing in theology, man, sometimes I don't know if this is a popular opinion. Sometimes I think you would be better served to make someone a loaf of bread than to read another Reformed dogmatics. And what I mean by that is that growth requires action, and your knowledge of theology should not merely be something that's in your head, but something that comes out of your hands. And I find that practice and that exercise cannot be neglected. It's a lot of times through those practices, those little things, that transformation really happens. Is my child asleep on you? Hilarious. Oh my goodness. Okay. What? No, because then he won't nap, but I feel so bad for you. Oh man, okay. I feel so bad for you. That he's so sweet. Okay, anyway. Yeah. Maybe like take him outside and I'll meet you there in like 10 minutes or something. I guess I gotta put him down for a nap this afternoon. All right. Any other questions? Yep, we got one up front. He's also got gummies in his bag, by the way. That might wake him up.
So
just to kind of add a question to how you're talking about servitude, as a single woman who currently works, and I recognize that I'm in a stage in life where I have the most resource and time and capabilities to serve in the church.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice or practical ways in which someone in that stage can serve that's kind of additional to your typical, like, working the nursery or meal train, just like kind of anything additional to that?
Yeah. So something I've really appreciated over the last couple of years is the single women who have offered to come help homeschool. I've had single women come do reading lessons with my kids, and part of it was that they wanted to learn themselves how to do that one day. So this was a real mutual help of, I've got 5 kids. I can't be with every kid at the same time, so having a single woman come do the reading lesson, do the math lesson was helpful for me, and it was helpful for her because she felt like she was getting prepared to be, around kids and do those things. So I think I have been so blessed by the women who have just offered to come do that kind of stuff. Like, hey, can I take your kids to the park so you can go to this doctor's appointment? Things like that have been, like, I just don't even have words for how helpful that can be, and how much I appreciate the perspective of the single woman who was like, oh no, this is good for me too, right? Like really believing that serving is like good for you too, is number one, true, but also just a great perspective to have. That's where you're gonna grow, is if you like really actually believe that this is what I ought to be doing, that I'm doing this in service to the Lord. I think is a massive game changer for your heart, and just spiritually. But so it's really gonna depend on what are your resources, what does your time look like. But talk to the moms, because I'm willing to bet they could use an extra hand. Like I'm willing to bet that they could. And if you can't give an extra hand in the home, or maybe the timing doesn't work, I think even just something that's really blessed me the last several years is having women in the church who just genuinely show love and affection to my kids. Like it means the world to my kids. Last night, a woman in our church took 2 of my kids out to like a food truck gathering because they're into that. Oh. And like they could not have had more fun. Like it was just so meaningful to them. So just creating that bond with them, I think is massively important and creates a huge impact in terms of fellowship. Like church is a genuine place my kids like to go. They have friends, but their friends aren't just their age. Like everyone there is their friend, and they mean it. Like they mean it. They enjoy it. So finding those like little things that you can do. I never would have been like, hey, can you take my kids to some food trucks? Like that never would have occurred to me, but that occurred to her. And that's, again, when I'm talking about principles versus methods, it's like she's obeying this principle in such a creative way that I would not have thought of. So yeah, ask moms and mean it. Ask moms and mean it. They definitely, I think they'll have ideas for you. Oh, we've got one. Yeah, sure.
So I guess, first of all, I just want to know what homeschool curriculum you use in kind of homeschool club. So it's really good.
Perfect. Now I know you're a listener.
I was trying to think of a real question to ask, just so I could ask that.
Yeah. You don't have to. It's fine. We can talk about anything.
So I guess our church, we're not like officially like family integrated kind of thing, but we do have kids in. We have nursery until like age 4, and then they're in, and so I have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old starting to think about trying to bring them to church and things like that. And I just didn't know if you had any recommendations on how to like really engage them in the service, not just sit and have them color or, play or just try to listen, but, I know it's different as they grow and have more understanding, but just trying to actually get them engaging with the worship, understanding what's going on, start to listen to things.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I do think getting your kids to sit through a service is a great goal that you should have very realistic expectations for. And I think one of the sad parts of the conversation I hear around this is moms who believe like, oh, like I'm not really going to church if I'm constantly having to take my kids out. And that's just not true. We should be in the church with our family. And I do think that, I remember the first time I heard this advice, I was like, does that really work? That doesn't sound like it works. But it works, so I learned. Practicing at home. Practicing at home is a big one. So just having, when you do family worship, or maybe you do a catechism in the morning, training them to sit and be a part of that is going to pay off in dividends when it comes time to be in the worship service. So practicing that regularly throughout the home, I think my son can currently sit for 2.5 minutes. And we're going to take all 2.5 minutes and we're going to turn it into 3. And that's sanctification right there. And that's just how it's going to go. And I think the big thing for me was changing my mindset from, well, oh boy, I go to church to get fed. What about me? To a mindset of, I go to church to serve. I'm here. Nobody's at church for me, right? Church isn't for me. Nobody's worshiping me. That's not why we're at church. So part of your worship as a mother is bringing the kid, as a father too, but I'm talking to ladies, is bringing your kids and having them there and training them. And it is sanctifying you, and it is serving you, and it is feeding you. So don't believe that lie that if I have to take my kid out, my pastor always, before we start the sermon, he gives the little like, hey, if you're new here, our kids are with us on purpose. It's okay if they're making noise. It's okay if they're eating snacks. Like, that's okay. If they get too loud, take them out, spank them, and bring him back in. He whispers that part. Well, tongue in cheek. He's not joking, though. I know him. Yeah, get used to doing that. You're going to see me in the hallway for the vast majority of this because he's 17 months old. And when he sees Dada, he's like, Dada, 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 Dada. And that's okay. He's learning. And every 2.5 minutes, I can get him to sit. Guess what he's going to do? He's going to sit. And it's okay. And it's rod and staff. It's the curriculum I use. And Veritas. All right. Anyone else? Yep, we got another one up front and over here, too.
It's really funny that you asked that question because I was going to ask almost the exact same question, but to follow up with the family worship thing, that is a technique we use to try, and it's, I don't know, our church is not family integrated, and they are very big on their children's program, and granted it is great, but we still bring them in, and people are very complimentary of them, and I'm like, okay, I want to hear what you hate, but
It always is louder to you than anybody else. Just remember that.
But anyway, I guess with family worship, sometimes I feel like we're kind of pulling teeth to get through that because they're just jumping on their bed or whatever. And I guess maybe if you had any practical tips for how mine are 2.5 and 5,
Yeah.
how to kind of make that, I don't know, maybe we've just gotten in a rut or something, but lately it's been kind of wild.
Yeah. Okay, so family worship, what it looks like in your household is none of my business, and it's not up to me. I'll tell you what we did when we had that age. Let them jump, make it fun, turn it into a song. My husband, this was his trick, is he turned the answers to the catechism questions into songs. So like to this day, my 14-year-old will march around the house and be like, lost communion with God, and like singing about death and like really like, but it's like in a ditty form. It's like real, it's like fun. And so it's like, unto death and life, and like they're just in the fridge like singing. But that's because when they're that age, if it's not entertaining, they are going to entertain themselves. So thankfully my husband is way more fun than I am, because I would have never thought to turn catechism questions, especially ones with big words like communion and efficacy, I'm like, what? He turned them into songs. And that's how the kids memorized them, so that to this day, that's how they will answer catechism questions. But I have a great many pictures of family worship for several years. My youngest daughter, her whole thing was showing up to family worship in the most ridiculous outfit possible. So I have her showing up to family worship like a helmet and skates. And we were like, yes, sing the doxology. Snow White outfit, just anything she could find like that was ridiculous. And I have photos of her like in the air. She's in the air for family worship. She's jumping so much. I have like airtime photos. A little charismatic maybe, but they memorized the catechism, they learned the songs, and they didn't dread it. And that was really like, you do not want your kids to hate this practice. Like if your kids hate this practice, you've already lost. You're going the wrong way, right? We want them to love the standard. So that's going to require something from us that I'm very boring, and I would not have thought of making it fun, but thank the Lord for my husband. So that's my recommendation, is how can you make it fun? And it doesn't need to be 45 minutes. Like, what are the things you want them to get out of it? Are you wanting them to learn the catechism? Are you wanting them to learn hymns? Whatever it is that you're aiming for, how can you get it done well and quickly and also fun? And I know that might sound counterintuitive to teaching them to sit, but when they're engaged, they sit. When they are engaged, they're more willing to sit. So that's where it helped. That's where it helped us. I think, we had one more question. Oh, 2 more questions. All right, we'll take yours, and then hopefully my baby's not killing that sweet lady.
My question is, how do you address a believer without playing tit for tat on an issue? For example, I have a friend who says she is pro-life, but everyone has a choice. So how do you, and I'm addressing a believer, without going back and forth.
What do you mean by back and forth?
I'm right, she's right.
Okay.
She's saying that she's right if she's a believer. Like if she's an unbeliever, I can see that. But as a believer, how do you address that?
Yeah. Well, I don't know how it couldn't be a back and forth. There's obviously a foundational crack in her worldview there that you're not coming from. I mean, to say that it's a choice, well, maybe you could go with it. It is a choice. Murder is a choice. You don't have to do it. Might be where I would take it. I guess the question would be, why are you defending the choice to murder? And what other, is she cool with, well, the choice to murder an adult? I guess the question is, why are you okay with someone choosing to murder an infant? Why are you okay with someone choosing, because that really is the crack, right, in the worldview is, well, I wouldn't kill a baby, but someone else might choose to. Well, my next question is, and? So what? What should the punishment be for murder? It would also be a great question. But you are going to go back and forth. That I do find a lot of times when you're talking to somebody who has that kind of position, you're talking to somebody who might have experience with abortion. They might know somebody close to them might have had an abortion. And so sometimes there can be, more underneath the surface there. But I'd be willing to go back and forth. I mean, and if it's somebody you love, that shouldn't be the end of the relationship, right? That shouldn't be the end of it. But the question ultimately is, why are you okay with that choice? And I think that has to be answered. And if they are a believer, you probably should ask them that. Out of love, right, for them, and a concern for them. I think that's a worthy question to ask. So, okay, I think we had one, yes, back there.
Hello? Okay, so I have a friend who is, she wouldn't claim to be feminist, but I see that a lot in her, and I see a lot of, what do you call it, syncretizing?
Syncretism?
Yes, so all kinds of different things, and I'm just like, oh my goodness. And there's a lot of, it's all talk positive, everybody's done wrong against me, but it's always, well, I'm here for you, even if you're like completely out of control. I'm here for you, hugs. And I'm like, so, I love her, and I really don't see regeneration in her, and I do pray for her. And, thank the Lord, by His grace, she has had an influence on me in a way where I learned a lot of things that got me thinking about things. And I was getting sucked into some of that, as far as like the spiritual thing, aside from the Lord. And I started kind of playing around with it a little, but at the same time trying to compare it with scripture, like, okay, this seems like to be a real thing, but how do I bring the Bible in on this? And by God's grace and providence, I found a podcast, and it was just like a dump of educational stuff. I'm like, this is great. Nobody talks about this. And the women in our church, well, not the one I currently go to, but before, I'm like, nobody talks about these things. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, how do you deal with a friend who seems feminist? I've always been kind of quiet, but I want to be like a new Hannah.
Does she claim to be a Christian?
I have asked her that before. She doesn't like the word Christian. There's a problem in that. So it's like she wants all of the Christian things without saying Christian. I've often asked her before what she believes about Christ. She believes him as a person. I honestly feel like maybe I should just ask her, who do you say that Jesus is? And see what she says. And I know there's only so much I can say, but it's not me that's going to transform her life. But how do you do it?
Yeah. Well, it's up to you. That's the good news and the bad news. It's up to you. I have a childhood friend who is not a Christian, and she's totally a feminist. And she has a lot of problems. And I love her. I love her. I'd take a bullet for that girl. It's deep in my bones, you know. She was the first girl that was like my friend as a kid, and I love her to death. She knows where I stand. I know where she stands. And maybe it doesn't sound like you quite do know where she stands, or maybe she doesn't know where you stand, but it really depends on what you want. It sounds like she needs the gospel, and maybe that needs to come from you. My friend who hates Jesus knows the gospel and doesn't want any part of it. And what that means is that my relationship with her does not look like any of my friendship, like other friends. It's not the same. I love to check in on her. I love to hear what her kids are up to. I don't love to hear about her yoga. I just bore her with my weightlifting until she stops talking about it. But it really depends on what you want. With my friend who's an unbeliever, who I love, what I want, again, because she already knows the gospel, she's not having it. I just want to know how she's doing and love her. And my prayer at this point is that maybe, because she's already heard the gospel and knows it, that maybe she'll see my life and see something. I don't know. Maybe that like door is just open a little bit for her. I want her to know the door is always open for her to come in through. And that doesn't take a lot. We've known each other our whole lives. There's a lot of trust there, but it just depends on what you want to do with it. I think I have a little bit of a cutthroat view on, well, Jesus said, you know, you're not with me, you're against me. So I have a very hands-open view to anyone who claims Christ, like we're friends, you know, that's how I view other believers. If you're not a believer, there's a part of you that is my enemy. There is a part of you. We're not on the same, there's only two kinds of people, believers and unbelievers. And I am aware of that in my friendship with the friend I'm talking about. And so there's a little bit of an open door and a little bit of a, keep an eye on that one. I know that's probably, I'm not trying to sound mean. Like I said, I'd take a bullet for her, love her to death. But she would love for me to join her in her hatred of the Lord. And I've just made it very clear to her that won't be happening. I think your friend needs the gospel, if you're asking me, though. On a general level, you can do whatever you want. The word of the Lord never returns void. You can trust that. But you can be friends with unbelievers too, if that is really where she is. It just needs to be eyes wide open. All right. Unless somebody raises their hands. Aha, we have one in a green sweater right there. Is that green or blue? I'm sorry. You're so far away. Okay, turquoise. Okay. Both were right answers. Great.
I also have a friend who, she's an older woman, so it's kind of one of those relationships where we're friends, but there's an element of respect. And I was thinking because her husband maintains a sin that she just holds on to, you know what I mean? And I have tried to talk to her about it, but she's also a woman who has done lots of biblical research and like, this is the way it is. Like, she leads her sons in Bible study because she feels her husband is not fit to fill that role. And so I've tried talking to her in a Christian friendly way, and basically my claim is to stay in your lane. You know, like I've tried, but it's one of those things where she's just a woman who always has a response that, so I've just resolved to just pray for her and her husband. But I don't know where, like if it's toxic to their household. Like you see it in their daughters, you see, so like there's been a slight divide, like our children don't spend as much time with them as they used to.
Yeah.
And I don't really know what other to do than just to pray.
Yeah, well, that's a great option, and you should keep doing that. I recently had to tell a friend they were wrong, you know. Yeah. 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 Sometimes, I do think there are times where being silent is wrong. And there are times where this is principles versus methods. Now, some of the principles you gave there were being broken, and that is the time where you should feel free to say something. So if you've said something, really, what else can you do? There are times where you might need to talk to a pastor. Now, I don't know if I was in the same church with this person, I'd probably talk to our pastors if I had already gone to them first and that didn't have any effect, right? You'd follow Matthew 18 and follow those steps there. But that is a very serious issue. And it might be worth, if you have, I don't know, like I said, I don't know if you're in the same church or not, but if you are, I think there's a way to win your brother, right? Hopefully, with the goal of restoration, and that's laid out for us in Matthew 18. And, take it. If they're not in the same church with you, keep praying. It sounds like you're putting up appropriate boundaries as well. So that's probably what you can do. All right. Y'all have got to be so bored of me by now. Right? Like this is, no? Okay. Any other questions, though, before we wrap it up? No? Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think we have fellowship time this afternoon. I think it was like scheduled in. I think or at least the paper I had said, go fellowship. So I'll put my baby down. Oh, hi. Look at that. Come find me between 1 and 3:30. Yeah, and we'll be around. All right. Well, thank you guys so much. I really do genuinely enjoy this and getting to meet you all. So I'm going to pray, and then I don't think you have to be anywhere till 11:30. So you've got like 20 minutes. All right, let's pray. Father, we're so thankful for the time that you've allowed us to come together today. I pray that you would make us women of the word, that you would make us bold, and that you would strengthen our hands for whatever duties you've set before us, and that we would be content and patient in all things, truly believing that you have given us everything that we need for life and godliness. And it's in Jesus' name that we pray. Amen. Thank you, ladies.